California, good afternoon, and welcome to another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. As always, we have ourselves a jam-packed show for you all regarding all of the Southern California sports, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Starting with the Lakers, who are officially eliminated from playoff contention. They weren't going to go far with how bad they were doing, unfortunately, but a guest and I will be there. We'll be ready to lower the casket. And how about El Trafico yesterday? The Galaxy edge out LAFC in probably one of the most craziest El Traficos I've seen in a long time. First LAFC lost of the season, by the way, so the Galaxy had something to cheer about. And season openers for the Angels, Dodgers, and Padres. Are they going well, or are they going south? Also, the Kings are inching closer and closer to that NHL playoff bridge. But can they get there? All that and more here on the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Thank you for joining me on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. Apologies if I didn't inform anybody on me not going live yesterday. I had a lot of busy stuff to do. The life of Teran Rodriguez is always a whirlwind, but regardless, I am here now. Without any further delay, let's get on into the Southern California sports action. But first, we have to introduce our guest. Our guest here has been a regular on the show. He has been able to talk Lakers, Clippers, Angels, Dodgers, Rams, you name it. And he's just an all-around amazing person. Ladies and gentlemen, my brother from the same mother, Mr. Justin Rodriguez. How you doing, Justin?
I'm doing all right. Could be better, but could be worse.
Yeah, I'm doing well as well. I think we both know we could be better, and we all know what's kind of holding us down. But we're about to jump into the Southern California sports action like a cold pool. So, obviously, my brother Justin and I are here to basically lower the casket on the Lakers' playoff hopes. So, obviously, they were eliminated from playoff contention on Tuesday, I want to say, against the San Antonio Spurs. It was Tuesday against the San Antonio Spurs, and it was just a disappointing day. What was looking like a promising season has now people saying that this is the most disappointing sports team ever in all of sports to miss the playoffs. And I kind of disagree with that, but what do you think about that little take on this is the most disappointing team to not make the playoffs in any sport?
I mean, it's hard to argue with that. I mean, considering the star power that's on this Laker team. I mean, I was listening to Mason in Ireland last week, and they posed that same question too. I certainly can't think of any team in the NBA, in NBA history, that has had this much star power and not even make the playoffs. when it comes to other sports, the only other team I could really think of off the top of my head was that Philadelphia Eagles team. I believe it was 2010 or 2011 with Michael Vick and all those stars, and what they called a super team. In the aftermath of the LeBron, Dwayne Wade, Bosch Heat super team, as well as the Boston Celtics of that era, they called that a super team, but they didn't even make the playoffs, in a really weak division. That's the only comp I can think of in modern professional sports. But this is a real disappointment. It's not only is it not that hard to make the playoffs if you're a professional team with a star, but you have 3 stars at least, 3 big time superstars. All 3, I believe, are on the NBA 75 team. I know Westbrook and LeBron are. I'm not sure if Anthony Davis made that. You feel free to correct me, but my point. But getting back to my point, you also had 2 extra spots for play-in, and you don't even make that. Now, granted, I realize that the Lakers have been dealing with whirlwinds of injuries. And Frank Vogel's been tinkering with like 50 different rosters. I lost count of exactly how many rosters that Frank Vogel has put out on the floor this year, because people are just going in and out. But at the same time, Reggie Miller made a great point on Thursday's TNT telecast of Lakers versus Warriors. Since none of the stars were going to be playing that night, I just thought I'd have it on as like wallpaper while I was, getting ready for bed, getting ready for work the following morning. But they talked. But by they, I mean Reggie Miller and I'm thinking Kevin Harlan was the play-by-play announcer for TNT, and they were talking about the Lakers and the disappointments throughout the telecast. And Reggie Miller made a really good point, and he nailed it on the head. The Lakers weren't the only team that was dealing with injuries and COVID issues. The Warriors were dealing with this all season long. They've hardly had any of their stars, play at the same time at once. I think that they showed a stat where Steph, Clay, and Draymond Green were only on the floor together for 11 minutes, not games, minutes throughout the entire season. And yet they currently have, I believe, the 3rd best record in the West.
Mm-hmm.
Am I correct?
I'm pretty sure you are. Let me just double check. But last I checked, I
can look it up. They're currently 3rd. They're a game ahead of the Dallas Mavericks. I don't know what the tiebreaker situation is there, but my point is they still finished with the top 4 seed in the Western Conference in spite of the lack of star power throughout the season. And that just goes to show you how good of a coach Steve Kerr is, and 2, the leadership and relationship that Steph, Clay, and Draymond have exhibited throughout the last decade, and what great mentors they are to a lot of their teammates and role players. You didn't really see that as much with the Lakers. It seemed like the chemistry was just never there with LeBron, Russell Westbrook, and when you don't have the chemistry amongst the 3 stars, it trickles down. It trickles down to the rest of the roster, and it just didn't seem like the teammates, and I'm going off of stuff that I read, they never really. There's no chemistry, and there's really not much enjoyment. The season just wasn't that fun to watch. Now, in contrast to the last couple games that the Lakers played without LeBron, Russ, and AD, it was actually some of the most entertaining basketball I've seen the Lakers play all season long. They were really loose, and they were high. They were high flying and energetic and played like they had nothing to lose. When you talk about guys like Austin Reeves and Dwight Howard and any other role player you can think of, it was Taylor THT, Taylor Horton Tucker, you name it, and they didn't beat the Warriors, but they did beat the Oklahoma City Thunder Friday night, and they had fun. I felt like for the first time all season, because they knew that this whole experience was finally over. They knew they weren't going to make the playoffs, and not to mention they're playing for their next contracts, so they really have nothing left to lose at this point. So I mean, I think I pretty much summed up the Lakers' season in the last 5 minutes.
You pretty much did. So yeah, I totally agree. And the worst part is for the Lakers, they don't have their first round pick for this upcoming draft, meaning that they're going to have to find ways to get creative during the offseason and try not to be old. There's actually a couple of comments here from my good buddy Courtney Harden, a.k.a. The Real Deal. He says, very disappointing season, but expectations were too high for such an old team. And yeah, I agree. And for that...
Yeah, me too.
And Reggie Miller said it in the first game of the season. It was going to be an experiment, a season-long experiment, and unfortunately, the experiment did not work out. And Courtney,
it was a failed experiment.
Mm-hmm, and Courtney actually goes on to say, he says, Lakers should have kept Caruso and not signed Russell Westbrook, or not traded for Russell Westbrook. And he says it was just a bad fit for the Lakers. Now,
they should have kept a lot of players. We could spend the whole hour that I have with you just engaging in revisionist history and talking about what the Lakers should and should not have done in the off season. But go ahead.
Yeah, and I totally agree with Courtney saying the Lakers should have kept Caruso. That was just a bad idea, letting him walk out the door. And I think every Lakers fan was just livid when they found out that Caruso was going to the Bulls. And look at how much success the Bulls are having now. It's really frustrating. And all in all,
well, although they're kind of struggling, though, I don't see them getting out of the first round. But I mean, I'm going off a tangent. They've also had injuries to deal with. So, but yeah. I mean, but absolutely. I mean, you could. I mean, DeRozan, could have come. Could have come to the Lakers. But the Bulls are willing to pay him more. And the Russell Westbrook trade is going to go down as one of the worst trades in Lakers history. I mean, it wasn't just Caruso that they gave up. I mean, look at how much they traded for. Look at how many great players they traded for an aging Russell Westbrook. I mean, high energy guys like Montrezl Harrell, Kyle Kuzma. Who am I forgetting? KCP, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. You name it.
Yeah, and they also gave up their first rounder.
Shooters.
Yeah, they gave up their first rounder to the Wizards, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So, honestly, yeah, the Lakers really lost that trade, and
it's a travesty.
And now, and you want to know who's taken the the brunt of this whole blame is Frank Vogel, and it's not his fault in my opinion. Like, they're saying that the Lakers are going to part ways with Vogel at the end of the season, but I really don't want...
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I really don't want Vogel to leave just because it's not all his fault. And it's not his fault the Lakers had such an old team. It's not his fault the Lakers lacked youth. It's not his fault that players got injured. Like, it's just not his fault that the Lakers didn't have this success. Like, he had to roll with the punches. And what is Vogel?
Yeah.
What's Vogel in his third year with the Lakers, or is it his fourth? I think it's his third because his first year they won the championship.
They won the championship. Yeah.
Then last year they lost in the first round, and then this year, this is year number 3. And if it really comes down to Vogel unfortunately getting the hook, then I wish Vogel nothing but the best, and I think the Lakers are making a huge mistake. However, I did hear rumors saying that Nick Nurse might be coming to the Lakers, so I actually want to hear your take on what Nick Nurse would bring if he comes to the Lakers, and if the Lakers do have to part ways with Frank Vogel and then they sign Nick Nurse, or they hire Nick Nurse.
Well, before I answer your question about Nick Nurse, Teran, I want to make this point about. I want to add to your point about Frank Vogel not deserving to be fired, and it's not his fault. I mean, I would make the argument that the vast majority of Laker Nation is not putting Frank Vogel as the scapegoat. Or at least the main scapegoat for why the Lakers, played absolutely horribly this season. I mean, granted, he did make some questionable, late game decisions at times, but like you said, Teran, he was just dealt a bad hand, a really bad hand. The pieces just didn't fit, and I think the main culprits have to be the front office. Rob Pelinka in particular. He's the one that made these trades. They made these trades. Sorry, my dryer went off in the background.
It's all good.
No real alarm. Rob Pelinka is the one that made the trade. And gave Frank Vogel the pieces to work with, and I mean, I don't know how much. I don't know if Jeannie Buss signed off on it, or or if LeBron had anything to do with getting Westbrook. I mean, there's always those rumors out there, but at the end of the day, the front office, makes the decisions. I think Jeannie Buss does shares some blame too, as well as ownership. It was just a real haphazard way they handled the offseason in the roster. I mean, they didn't have shooters. They didn't have people. They didn't have players to shoot free throws. I mean, this is the worst free throw shooting team. I know we've been saying that for years about the Lakers, but this team was just terrible at free throws, especially late in games. I mean, think about how many games the Lakers could have won had they made their free throws in clutch time, including LeBron, including Russell Westbrook, including Anthony Davis.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to answer your question about Nick Nurse. It's definitely not all Frank Vogel's fault. But at the same time, again, you didn't even get your team to the play-in tournament. I mean, Frank Vogel's got to have some sort of culpability in that you don't even get one of the 10 best records with LeBron James. LeBron James alone, even though he didn't play for the entire season, I know he wasn't completely healthy, but he had a monster of a year, and he had tons of great moments this year. I mean, a team with that caliber of a player does not even get you one of the 10 best records in the Western Conference. I mean, you got to give LeBron, at least you've had 82 games to tinker with this roster and put the best pieces around LeBron James to win games and win enough games to get you into the playoffs. As it stands right now, you only needed really 35 out of 82 games to get you in the playoffs. I mean, you didn't even need to win half your season. So, unfortunately, I think Frank Vogel, if he is let go, I'm not surprised. And to answer your question about Nick Nurse, I mean, Nick Nurse is a good coach. I mean, he led Toronto to the NBA title. Is he still the coach of the Toronto Raptors right now?
I'm not sure of. I want to say he still is, but with how the Raptors are doing, I don't understand why they'd want to get rid of him. Like, the Raptors are surprisingly number 5. So yeah, he's still the head coach. Yeah, he's still the head coach of the Raptors. So I am very shocked that if Nick Nurse gets the hook from Toronto, if that's the case, then I think the Lakers do need to jump on getting Nick Nurse. I mean, I'd hate to see Vogel go, especially since he won the Lakers a championship or coached the Lakers to a championship. But all in all, I think getting Nick Nurse would be a huge plus.
Yeah, it seems like he knows how to manage rosters and knows how to put the best pieces put the pieces into the best situation to win. So yeah, I'm not against that.
Yeah, and also I gotta make note of this, that the Lakers team this year did not mesh well together. They unfortunately couldn't mesh well in time. It took them just too long to get one another in conjunction with one another. Yes, they didn't have Kendrick Nunn for most of the season, and then Anthony Davis got banged up. But as you alluded to, all these other teams, like the Warriors, they were dealing with injuries and whatnot. So I think for the Lakers, they're just going to have a mixture of youth and experience on their team and just not have a bunch of old guys. And their defense is what really let them down. You compare their defense from this year to the past 2 seasons. Obviously, last year it wasn't the greatest, but at times it had its moments. And then the previous season where they won the NBA championship in the bubble, their defense was basically Brink's home security advanced. So all in all,
they were number 1.
Mm-hmm. So all in all, that defense has to get fixed up, and the Lakers have the right pieces. It's just that they all have to mesh well with one another. I just think Westbrook just wasn't the greatest fit, and I really want to believe that Westbrook was going to be a good fit. I didn't want to be a negative Nancy or just to believe the anti-hype, but honestly, I guess now the Westbrook trade was just a failed experiment, and more importantly, what are the Lakers going to do with Russell Westbrook now? Because I don't think any team wants to have him, and I think this will probably be the last segment unless you have something else to add. Who's going to take Russell Westbrook, and how much are teams going to want to give up for Westbrook? Because at this point, I don't think he's that valuable. He might be worth maybe a second rounder or maybe a couple complimentary players, but I don't think Westbrook is going to be of value to some teams unless they're very desperate for a veteran point guard.
Yeah, I agree. The only team I could really think of that would be willing to take on Russell Westbrook and the contract that he has, granted, it is an expiring contract, but it's an expiring contract of $46 million. The only team I could think of that would be willing to take him on would be the Houston Rockets, because John Wall is making just as much money, and he's getting paid just to sit on the bench.
And that was another thing. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry to jump out like that, but that was another thing. The Lakers had their opportunity to trade for John Wall. They could have thrown in a couple future picks and maybe a couple of complementary players on their team, but they just did not want to pull that trigger of getting John Wall. I'm not trying to say that John Wall would have fixed the Lakers overnight, but it sure as heck would have been a better fit as the Lakers' turnovers basically piled up, and Westbrook was making knee-jerking decisions. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure that John Wall would have been a quick fix, but I mean, at this point, you've got nothing to lose, and you know, it would pretty much be an even exchange, and you know, if John Wall works out, then great, you know. But if he doesn't, then you know, just cut him after next year, let him walk, and then at least you got that money off the cap, and you can you could go from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was something the Lakers definitely missed out on, and just all in all, it's just a season of what could have been. I know Anthony Davis was saying we could have been this and that, but honestly, you just got to roll with the punches. It's got to be the next man up, and I know it's tough on a nightly basis, but still, you have to basically man up against these tough teams, especially in the Western Conference, because the West is stacked with quite a bit of talent, on paper at least, but still, it could have been a better season. Like, I wouldn't have even minded if the Lakers had lost in the play-in game, but now, with no play-in game, it's just a facepalm season, and with no draft picks, I think they only have a second-rounder this year. I think Lakers are just going to have to get creative in terms of finding youth. They're going to have to sign better key pieces that can mesh well with LeBron and AD, and they're going to have to see what they can do with all these expiring contracts. Like, do they bring back all these one-year dealers like Carmelo or Dwight Howard, or the list goes on and on?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to gauge, you know, what to surround this team with, because unfortunately, I think the Lakers are going to be, unfortunately for Lakers Nation, I think they're going to be stuck with these players at least for another year, just because they're, you know, Russell Westbrook is basically untradeable unless, you know, they you know, the Rockets will take him on, like I mentioned earlier. But is anybody want to get Anthony Davis into how injury prone he has been all of his career and continues to be, you know? And I mean what I've heard people say, well, maybe we should trade LeBron. You know, I think Bill Plaschke even alluded to that in the LA Times. But I mean, what team wouldn't want to have LeBron James? But at the same time, you know, if the Lakers do trade LeBron, I kind of agree with Shaq. They may never get a star again because, I mean, you're trading arguably the greatest player of all time, who's still, you know, who's still putting up great numbers when he's healthy. That is, at least.
And
but again, health is going to continue to be an issue going into next year. I mean, LeBron will be 38 next year, and you know his body, you know, is slowly but surely breaking down. And Anthony Davis is breaking down even faster than and I don't think he's even in his 30s yet. So there are just so many question marks, and I don't really think it's going to matter, you know, who the Lakers surround, you know, the core with, because at the end of the day, I don't think you're going to, you know, what's going to happen. The Lakers are going to make you have you know, younger players, shooters, but you get into the play-in tournament and lose in the first round like last year. I mean, clearly the Phoenix Suns, the Memphis Grizzlies and the Golden State Warriors and maybe the Mavericks are the future of the Western Conference. And at this point, I certainly don't see the Lakers getting past any of those teams next year.
Yep, it's
good. At least with the roster with the roster currently constructed.
It's going to be a major rebuild going forward, and you mentioned possibly trading Anthony Davis. Like, the Lakers gave up so much for Anthony Davis. Obviously, the Lakers got a ring out of it. However, what are they going to get in return for Anthony Davis? Like, if people are going to look at, Anthony Davis is injury prone, like, unless the team really needs a big man so desperately that they're going to want to trade at least something good, like a good haul, not a great haul, like, I don't think Anthony Davis is going to be that tradable. And I'd hate to see Anthony Davis walk out the door just because he's gotten pretty much bad deals when it comes to injuries, but it's all up to the front office at the end of the day. And if they make that decision, then so be it. It's business, unfortunately, and the NBA, like I said, is basically like a full-time job. You do your job, you're going to get rewarded, and you might stay, but it all depends on what the players like and what their feelings are like and how much money they want to make. So, to close the book on the Lakers, do you have anything else you want to add about this disappointing season before we jump on to another topic?
Well, on the topic of Anthony Davis, I think there may be teams that are, if they're really looking for a big man, that they may at least be willing to at least talk to the Lakers. I mean, I mentioned a few weeks ago that Chicago may be a viable destination for him, only because that's his hometown, I'm not sure Zach LaVine's going to be able to sign or is thinking of signing long term. He's had an injury history, but at least he's younger. So, if they can work out a deal where the Bulls don't have to give up too much to get Anthony Davis, then I could see that possibly happening. Along with a pick or two, but it is a roll of the dice just because of his injury history, especially most recently. Mm-hmm.
And that's the one thing that sucks about this whole situation. But it's not like NBA 2K where you could just turn off injuries. Like, you have to basically just roll with the punches. And like I said, for the Lakers, they're just going to have to find some youth and find some other non-like injurable players or players that haven't had a too big of an injury history that's going to like bring them to greater heights, if you know what I mean. And even if it means just developing players from the draft and just keeping their picks instead of just trading them, kind of like the Rams did. The only difference is for the Rams is that, and not to go off on a tangent here, is that it eventually panned out even though they had to give up quite a bit. So back to the Lakers, I think for them, they're just going to have to go with the approach of they're going to have to go a little bit more younger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, definitely long term they're going to have to rebuild and get younger, and and you can't do that without draft picks.
Yep. All right, now jumping over to the Clippers. So the other LA team is actually in the play-in tournament, and they are the 8th seed as they'll take on the Minnesota Timberwolves. So despite not having Paul George for a good chunk of the season, and despite not having Kawhi Leonard at any point in the season, the Clippers are still resilient as heck as they look to try to take on a Timberwolves team that is vastly improved. So what can you say about the Clippers and how they have been resilient even though they haven't had a bunch of their star players?
Well, there's another example of what Reggie Miller was talking about on Thursday's telecast. I mean, the Clippers are another team that had their star players out for almost the entire season. Certainly, Kawhi's been out for the entire season, and yet the Clippers night in, night out go out, with the pieces they have, and they fight and they fight and compete as if their lives and careers depend on it. There's a reason. There are multiple reasons, actually, why the Clippers swept the Lakers and have been doing that for the last couple seasons at least. And I think they've won 8 in a row against the Lakers, 9 in a row, something like that. Because they just go out and compete like dogs, especially players like Reggie Jackson. I mean, that guy just does not know the meaning of the word quit. And remember the stat I gave you where the Lakers were the second, had that was the team that had the second most blown double-digit leads all season long, and lost. The only team that had more double-digit blown leads, resulting in losses was the Indiana Pacers, and they're a rebuilding team. The Clippers are the exact opposite. The Clippers, pulled a comeback kids part deux against the Utah Jazz a couple weeks ago. They had, they pulled a game 6 all over again. They came back. They were down by 25 in the third quarter. They came back and beat the Utah Jazz again. Are you aware that the Clippers have done that 4 times this season? Mm-hmm. 4 times they've erased 20-plus point leads, and they've come back and won games. That's just unheard of.
Yeah, I have, and I think one of those wins came against the Philadelphia 76ers, and it also came against the Washington Wizards. I don't remember the fourth one, but I'm pretty sure it was probably against someone good, and honestly, it's quite incredible that the Clippers have done this, and I'm really quite impressed that Tyronn Lue has performed well as head coach, and this is a coach that has kind of bounced around, and he was the assistant coach for Doc Rivers, and this kind of makes me wonder if Doc Rivers was actually the problem, and I guess players just weren't buying in, but in Doc's defense, he's a great coach, he's a veteran coach, but I guess maybe players just wanted a little bit more youth. And all in all, I think Tyronn Lue is making the most of his opportunities with the Clippers.
Well, Kawhi and Paul George have confirmed, or at least from what I've read, that they weren't exactly buying into Doc Rivers' system and philosophy. So I think that's definitely the case. I mean, look, so far in his 2 seasons that he's been coach of the Clippers, he's outperformed Doc. Just last year alone, he took the Clippers to the first conference finals in franchise history, and they did it. They beat the Utah Jazz without Kawhi Leonard for the most part.
Yeah, and it's quite amazing what Tyronn Lue has done, and this Clippers team is just resilient, and they could be probably a sneaky good tough first-round opponent. And I actually saw in a poll which team would be a tougher opponent to play against in the first round in regards to play-in teams, the Brooklyn Nets or the Los Angeles Clippers. And I think most people voted for the Clippers. And I totally agree. I think that's a team that is resilient as heck, and while they have had a couple of games where they kind of lapsed, like against the Bulls, as of recent they lost a 10-point lead after the third quarter and eventually lost in overtime, and they nearly blew a 20-point lead against the Phoenix Suns, but I don't even know if but that was because the Suns were coming off of a second of a back-to-back, so all in all, you have to wonder if this Clippers team could, hence the word could, possibly upend Memphis and Phoenix. But first, they have to get through the play-in tournament. But I'm pretty sure even if they don't beat the Timberwolves, they can get through the Spurs or the Pelicans. Like, the only way they don't get through is if Paul George doesn't play or Reggie Jackson doesn't play, and then the Pelicans just have some of Michael Jordan's secret stuff. And as well as the Spurs.
What's the status on Terrence Mann? He took a big shot in that game last week. I forget who they were playing that night, but is he still playing? Because they need him. He's one of their biggest energy guys. Yeah, it was against the Suns last week.
So he's not listed on the Clippers injury report. All I see is Paul George is out, Marcus Morris is out, and I don't even know if that is basically...
Yeah, they're just resting them.
Yeah, because you have nothing to lose. This Thunder matchup is a throwaway matchup. But
a lot of these games are meaningless today. There are still teams like Philly and Boston that are playing for seeding. Mm-hmm. As well as Golden State and Dallas, but yeah, there's most has already been decided, maybe with the exception of Brooklyn. I mean, they're kind of in a close one with Indiana, but yeah. Speaking of Brooklyn, I'm stunned at that poll that you just read, that the people that they would rather face Brooklyn than the Clippers. I mean, if I'm a team in the East, I don't want to see Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving in the first round. But I guess the Clippers are a better defensive team. I mean, Brooklyn, as great as they are on offense, I mean, they have one of the worst defenses in the league. And that could come back and bite them. I mean, I think that, I'm thinking out loud here. These play-in, there's so many things that could happen with this play-in stuff, especially in the East. I mean, the West has been decided already, as you mentioned earlier, but there's still so much to be decided in the East, at least as far as who's going to play who in the play-in tournament. But I don't think if the Brooklyn Nets somehow fell to the 8 and ended up playing Miami, I don't think they would play Miami. I don't think they would beat Miami in the best of 7, just because Miami's gotten so much better as a defensive team ever since they went on that 4-game losing streak, and Jimmy Butler got into it with Eric Spoelstra, which I thought was kind of funny. But yeah. They wouldn't beat Miami. I mean, anybody else I think is fair in the East. I think is kind of fair game. I don't think they would beat Milwaukee, but I mean, I could see them being Boston or Philly maybe. Because you never know with James Harden in his playoff history. But going back to the Clippers. I mean, I do agree they would be a tough out, assuming they get into the playoffs, which I agree. I think they will get in as either the 7 or the 8. I don't see New Orleans or San Antonio beating the Clippers with a completely healthy Paul George at the helm. Minnesota maybe, but they'll get in as the 7 or 8. I disagree. I don't think they beat Phoenix without Kawhi Leonard. But I could see them. I could see them pulling off an upset over the Memphis Grizzlies, a team that hasn't had as much playoff experience as Phoenix has had in the last year or so.
Yeah, and even though you say that, I do need to mention that the Grizzlies' record without Ja Morant is quite incredible. I think they've only lost 2 maybe 3 games without Ja Morant. It's quite amazing, and I saw Terrence Mann is not on the injury report, so I think Terrence Mann is good to go for the playoffs, though I can imagine the Clippers will rest him along with Paul George and the others. So either way, for the Clippers, I think it is more doable to beat the Grizzlies than it is for the Suns, just because I think the Suns have more of a complete team and they have those pieces, whereas the Grizzlies,
and they're hungry. Not to mention, they're hungry after losing in the finals to Milwaukee last year.
Mm-hmm. That was something I was also going to mention, that they definitely would like to have another return trip to the NBA Finals. It seems like they have had that season, and they're having that great season. It's just all about performing well in the playoffs. And as for the Grizzlies, yeah, I feel the Clippers have what it takes to beat the Grizzlies, but the Grizzlies just are also good around the board, not just with Ja Morant, but Jaren Jackson Jr. is another one of those top players. I'd have to gauge to how the Grizzlies do against the Boston Celtics tonight, just because the Celtics are vying for playoff positioning as well, because they and the Sixers are tied for first place in the Atlantic Division. The Celtics actually have the tiebreaker over the Sixers, so I really think it's going to be quite something to see when it comes to Celtics versus Grizzlies. And the Sixers have the lowly Pistons, which should be a win. If they don't, then they don't deserve to be number 3. And they don't deserve to win the Atlantic Division. So I think this Grizzly, but you also have to wonder if the Grizzlies are going to just rest everybody, just because they can't go higher than 2. They can't fall any lower than that, though, but they can't overtake.
Who was the tiebreaker between Milwaukee and Boston, though? Because Milwaukee's losing badly.
I want to say that's a very good question. I want to say it might be Boston, just because I think as of recent, I know the Bucks beat the Celtics, but I'm not.
They split their season series. I know that, and in conference record, they only a half a game separates those two teams. You know, the Milwaukee Bucks are 33-18. The Boston Celtics are 33-19. So if Milwaukee loses and Boston wins, then Boston would be the 2, and Milwaukee would be the 3.
That'd be quite interesting because, sorry to cut you off there, but if they
you're fine.
If they happen to play Cleveland, which is drastically improved, Brooklyn or Cleveland could be an interesting matchup.
Well, they haven't played well, though. They have not had a great second half of the season. The Cleveland Cavaliers. They've fallen hard.
Yeah, with all those injuries.
I was going to say the injuries have not helped them at all. So I don't see Cleveland even getting into the playoffs this year. I don't think they're better. I don't think they're better than Atlanta. I certainly don't think they're better than Brooklyn.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think the best would probably be, at best they'd probably be the 8th seed, but then they get stomped on by Miami. But I totally agree with you in that aspect. I kind of forgot about their injuries. I know that Evan Mobley's having a great season, but he's also been battling injury after injury, and it's just been tough sledding. And they
don't have Jared Allen, right?
Yeah, that's what I've heard. But yeah, I definitely think injuries have kind of hampered the Cavaliers. But going back to the Clippers, not to go off on a little tangent, where do you think the Clippers will finish? Do you think they'll get the 7th seed, or will their destiny be the 8th seed?
I think they'll finish 7th. 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 I think they'll f Well, I mentioned earlier that the Clippers would get the 7 or the 8. I'm not sure where they'll finish. I mean, Minnesota's a good team, so I wouldn't be shocked if they will be hosting that playing game. So I wouldn't be shocked if Minnesota holds their own against the Clippers. They've been one of the most improved teams in the NBA this year. Not as improved as certainly not as improved as the Memphis Grizzlies have had, but but this is one of their better years in recent memory. I mean, Karl Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell are playing with much more confidence than they have been in recent years. I think when Jimmy Butler got to Minnesota, he really showed him up and kind of was basically a jerk to them, and it really kind of shook their confidence. I mean, D'Angelo wasn't on the Timberwolves back then, but Karl Anthony Towns has really played with much more confidence. So and the Clippers don't really have much size besides Ivica Zubac. So I think that game goes either way. But at worst they finish 8th, and they lose to the Phoenix Suns in the first round.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. You also have to factor in that Michael Beasley is having not Michael Beasley. Anthony Edwards is having a great season. Malik Beasley is also having a solid season for the Timberwolves. And you know what would be really interesting to see when it comes to Timberwolves versus Clippers? The Pat Beverly revenge game. Just because, unfortunately for Pat Beverly, he kind of got let go from the Clippers, or I think he got traded, but now Pat Bev is going to be on the Timberwolves, and he's going to be facing his old team. I'm sure there won't be any love lost.
That's a good point.
Yeah. I'm sure there will be no love lost when it comes to Pat Bev and the Clippers, but I think Pat Beverly is going to be competing like heck and trying to get into the head of all those players, especially since...
Yeah, he's not a guy that lets the grudge go unpunished. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. And he loves getting into the heads of all these star players, like when he was with the Clippers, he got in the head of LeBron and whatnot. So I think that... And
Kevin Durant. Remember that series?
Oh, yeah. And
they stole 2 games on the road against the Warriors. Yeah, in that series. Mm-hmm. I thought that was going 7. But yeah.
Yeah, and since Pat Beverly knows how the Clippers function, having been on the Clippers last year and the previous year when the Clippers had some of those players like Paul George and whatnot and Reggie Jackson, I think that kind of gives a little bit of an advantage to the Timberwolves. Now, obviously, the Clippers know the Timberwolves just as well, but I think with that former player having played with all those guys, I think that gives a little bit of a slight edge to Minnesota.
Yep.
So you have anything else to add on the Clippers before we move on to our final topic together?
No, I think that's it. I think, again, like I said, I mean, the Clippers have had a tremendous season. Clipper fans shouldn't be disappointed as to how their season turned out, especially if they make the playoffs. Without Paul George, without Kawhi Leonard and Paul George for a great chunk of the season. But I mean, unless they get matched up against Memphis, I don't see them getting past the first round.
Same here. So that's going to do it for the NBA portion of the show. We're actually going to jump into a little bit of MLB, just because it's only the opening series week for the Angels and the Dodgers.
Real quick, I've only got 5 minutes here.
Uh-huh. Oh!
Hello?
I thought you had something to say, Justin. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say. I mean, look, keep. I'm sorry. I've been really enjoying this conversation this last hour, but unfortunately, I'm on a time crunch. I got places to go after 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Well, 4 o'clock my time. 2
Yeah.
o'clock your time.
Yeah, no problem. So, yeah, we'll just keep it short and sweet. So, Angels have dropped 2 of their first 3 against the Astros, and then the Dodgers have split their first 2 games against the Rockies. Currently, the Rockies lead the Dodgers 6-4, while the Angels lead the Astros 1-0. It's very early in the game, but what can you say your expectations are for the Angels and Dodgers?
Well, the Dodgers, it's very simple. I mean, I definitely expect the Dodgers to win the division, even though San Francisco shocked us last year and won the NL West last year, by a hair. You look at the Dodgers roster, at least their hitting lineup. It's just insane. I'm trying to find their. Sorry, I'm trying to go to the roster. Listen to this roster that they have going: Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Trey Turner, Max Muncy, Justin Turner, Will Smith, Cody Bellinger, Chris Taylor, and Gavin Lux at the bottom of the lineup. Cody Bellinger, Chris Taylor, and Gavin Lux at the bottom of the lineup. And Gavin Lux has been a huge plus for the Dodgers. That's a hell of a. You talk about going through a gauntlet. They're struggling out the gate, but again, it's early. I don't expect. Over the course of a 162 game season, I think the Dodgers will be fine. Again, maybe the Giants, get by them and win the division, and maybe the Dodgers go in as the wild card. The only reason why that would happen is because as great as the hitting lineup has been or is this year, as tremendous as as their hitting lineup is going to be, their pitching is suspect. Mm-hmm. At the very least, their starting pitching. You've got Clayton Kershaw. Walker Buehler is without question their ace going forward. But Julio Urias is probably the 2, Clayton Kershaw the 3. But after that, maybe Tony Gonsolin and I think David Price is still on the pitching roster. What do you have? And is their bullpen? And they've had bullpen issues, in the last couple of years. And again, I think their hitting will carry them will definitely carry them to at the very least the wild card. But it'll be interesting to see how their pitching holds up. So far, it hasn't been great. But we'll see over the course of the season. As far as the Angels is concerned, I'm a little bit more confident in their pitching than I have been certainly in years past. But I'm just not sure they have enough. Their bullpen is still suspect at best. Noah Syndergaard pitched a great game last night against Justin Verlander. I was really pleased to see that. Who's their second guy? Is it Patrick? Help me out here, Teran.
I want to say it's not Ward or anything. I was going to say
Patrick Sandoval.
Yeah, Sandoval.
Patrick Sandoval, I've heard is pretty good. From Mission Viejo, if you can believe that.
Yeah,
I'm just looking at the pitching roster right now. He's a Mission Viejo native. Certainly Shohei Ohtani is going to do his thing. But I mean, other than that, I mean, a lot of these guys have never been heard of before. So I don't know how that's going to work out. I mean, the offense is fine. The offense is nothing short of great. I mean, but of course, Trout's going to do his thing. Anthony Rendon, hopefully he's healthy and can really provide. But David Fletcher's a good hitter, and do we still have Andrelton Simmons? I'm not seeing him on the roster.
I don't think they have Andrelton Simmons on the roster, and didn't Fletcher leave? Oh no, he's still on the roster. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm still seeing him on the roster here on ESPN.com.
Yeah, Fletcher's on the roster. My bad. So I'm thinking of probably something else. I'm thinking of Bam Bam, the guy with the nickname Bam Bam, but who's now on the Diamondbacks. But I get what you mean. I think Simmons.
Well, if we lost Andrelton Simmons, that's a big loss. He's a great shortstop and a tremendous hitter.
I think the problem with him was probably injuries because
yeah.
Yeah, I remember he had a grade 3 ankle sprain, and that stuff was not fun for him. So I will miss Simba, as lots of people call him, but I think he's going to do well, and I wish him the best. But you mentioned Anthony Rendon. He has to stay healthy because the Angels dumped, what was it, $220 million on him? Either way, it was just
something like that. I remember they paid him a lot. They were going to give that money to Garrett Cole, but he went to the Yankees, so they spent that on Rendon.
Biggest mistake as well, by the way. But
what?
Garrett Cole going to the Yankees because he got tortured by the Red Sox, even though
the Yankees massively overpaid for Garrett Cole. 9 years. I mean, for a pitcher, and that's a lot. And the Angels certainly didn't win. The Angels certainly dodged one there.
Yeah, and someone else who I think should do well is Joe Adell. Now, he was a rookie for last year when it came to the Angels, but I think he's gonna, now that he's got his feet wet, I think he's gonna do some big things for the Angels, and he does add depth. It's just that last year was a little bit of a rough year, obviously, with not having Trout and Rendon. But now that Joe Adell has a year under his belt, I think he can only go up from here, and I'm excited to what he can bring to the table.
Yeah, I've heard he's good.
Mm-hmm. So we have crossed the 1 hour mark, but I definitely do appreciate you coming on and talking some sports with me. It really does mean a lot, Justin. So, on that note, we're going to take ourselves a quick little commercial break. When we come back, I'll be discussing the Padres, El Trafico, LA Kings, and Anaheim Ducks, and I'll be giving out my Dum Dum of the Week award. So you are listening to the SoCal Supreme Sports Show here on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all the sports. We'll be right back after this.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Davidson.
It's your boy, Notorious Law.
And we are the hosts of Fast Break here on IE Sports Radio, where we discuss everything in the world of basketball from prep to the pros.
You guys should definitely check us out, man. Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We got all the basketball information you guys need, so we look forward to you guys listening in.
And please do, because we are the best basketball show on this side of the Mississippi. And please do check us out on Twitter at FastBreakISR. D-Lock, where's our time again?
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That give you guys plenty of time on a Sunday.
Tune in.
It's IE Sports Radio. It is your direct feed for all that is sports. It is Philly Sports Talk with Cash and Chris every Tuesday night right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Philly Sports Talk with Cash and Chris is the most comprehensive view on Philadelphia sports exclusively right here on IE Sports Radio. You know what it is, your direct feed for all that is sports. Tuesday night, IE Sports Radio, Philly Sports Talk with Cash and Chris.
What's good, fight fans? It's your boy, Marcus Los Great, here to give you what you want, here to give you what you need. Yeah, man. Yeah. I'm coming to you live, straight from your mama's basement with a crispy, awesome white tea. We are coming to you live every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Powered by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
College football, and do you want to hear a college football show dedicated to all that is college football, including junior college and the CCCAA and the NJCAA, the NAIA, and the NCAA, including Division III, Division II, Division I AA in the FCS, and Division I A in the FBS? Well, then look no further. Join myself, Larry B., and my colleagues, Mr. H-Town Blake Henley, and Mr. Christian Espinoza, each week during the college football season for the latest in college football on 3 and Out College Edition, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What is going on, everybody? This is Ben Mattello, the host of the Yinza Report, right here on IE Sports Radio. I'm bringing you the latest in the Steel City, the City of Champions, from the Steelers, the Penguins, the Pirates, as well as the college game with both Penn State and Pitt. You could join me every Tuesday afternoon at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, right here on IE Sports Radio, where I'll be talking about everything from the Steel City, the City of Champions, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
That's right, everybody. Definitely check out all of our amazing shows on IE Sports Radio. They really are great, and also our hosts are amazing. Gotta give a shout out to Marcus Losgray, who popped in the chat room, as well as Larry B, who just popped in the chat room, and Andrew Hagenbach, who just popped in the chat room. Larry says SoCal, and Andrew says, hope you're having a great show. Thanks, buddy, and hope to hear you pretty soon as well. So, to wrap up the... Actually, no. I have to do this. We have to lower the casket on the Lakers season. So join me as we play a little taps for everybody, lowering the casket on the Lakers' playoff hopes. Alright, I just need to get that out of the way. I was going to have play taps before my brother came on, but unfortunately I couldn't have him on the line, and I couldn't play taps in the background as well. So now jumping back to the MLB. So the Padres, they won 2 of their first 3 games. They are currently beating the Arizona Diamondbacks 5-0. Yeah, this isn't surprising. They did get walk-offed in the first game of the season, but they have responded well with their next 2 games, having resulted in wins over the Diamondbacks. Andrew says the Lakers may not make the postseason, but the Galaxy won El Trafico. Yeah, I'm going to get into El Trafico in a little bit, but to close on the Padres, yeah, I knew they would take at least 3. I was hoping they'd take 4, but it is what it is. And then the Dodgers are kind of the surprise team because they're currently down 7-4 to the Rockies in the bottom of this 5th inning. Now, in the Dodgers' defense, it is tough to play at Colorado, the higher altitude and whatnot, but yeah, it's only 1 series. I don't think the Dodgers should worry about this too much. Now, the Angels are kind of the other surprise. I was hoping if they salvage a split against the Astros, that would be great. I mean, I kind of had them taking only 1 game out of 4 against the Astros. Yes, I know I'm a little bit faithless in the Angels against the Astros, but this is a tough series, and Astros are always big brother when it comes to the Angels. But if the Angels can salvage a split, I think that would be fantabulistic. So that's that for the MLB. Just like my brother said earlier, it's nothing to be overly concerned about if you're a Dodgers or Angels fan or a Padres fan. But honestly, as long as the losses don't pile up, it's a 162-game season. It's a marathon and not a sprint. So I think the Padres, Angels, well, at least the Dodgers and Padres will be fine. Angels, we'll have to see. So jumping on over to the MLS. So last night was one of the most craziest El Traficos we have had in a long time, as the Galaxy upended LAFC 2-1 at the old StubHub Center, aka Dignity Health Sports Park. the Galaxy scored the first goal courtesy of Javier Fernandez, and then they also scored a second goal courtesy of Sega Koulibaly. And then LAFC got on the board with Christian Arango scoring in the 79th minute. Now, LAFC actually had the game-time goal in extra time. And I believe it was Latif Blessing that scored the goal. It was Latif Blessing that scored the goal. However, after using VAR, I imagine that is video after result, it was deemed no goal. I want to say that maybe LAFC was offsides, but VAR deemed it no goal, so that wiped away the goal from LAFC, and eventually the Galaxy held on to win 2-1. There was lots of chaos in that game. There were lots of yellow cards handed out. It got to the point where the Galaxy, before extra time, were out of substitutions, and it was just absolute chaos. It was probably the most craziest El Trafico we have ever, I repeat, ever seen in my life. It was just crazy. And LAFC actually dominated possession. They had 57% compared to the Galaxy's 43%. LAFC had 17 shots, and 7 of them were on goal. Galaxy, on the other hand, had 9 shots, and ironically enough, 2 of them were on goal, which were both basically the 2 that the Galaxy had scored. So the Galaxy had 7 yellow cards to LAFC's 3. And if you're doing math, that is a combined 10 yellow cards. Now, I'm not sure if we've had El Traficos that have had 10 yellow cards. Surprisingly, there were no red cards, and I say surprisingly quite loosely just because this is a heated rivalry, and it's basically early vying for the Western Conference. But for the Galaxy to grind it out and win against a tough LAFC team that had not lost a match going into that game is quite impressive. And funny enough, that win has actually catapulted the Galaxy into second place in the Western Conference. I know it's still early, and I know both teams have only played have played 6 matches apiece, but I still think it's pretty funny seeing the Galaxy just catapult their way up to to second place, right behind LAFC. And Andrew basically told me best when it came to his Soccer Scoreboard Show account. The Galaxy needed to shine, and they needed a statement win, and I think they got it. Now, obviously, the Galaxy shouldn't let this win go to their head. Like, there's still plenty of season left, and I think this win is great and all, especially since they beat Portland the week after, and that could have been an easy trap game, but they ended that losing streak, their 2-match losing streak, with that win over Portland. Now next week they will be heading down to take on Chicago. I want to say they're playing at Soldier Field. Yes, they are playing at Soldier Field. They are playing the Chicago Fire. And I think it's going to be an interesting matchup because currently Chicago is 6th in the Eastern Conference. It's always one of those early interesting games where you kind of have to raise your brows. Obviously, the Galaxy have been playing up and down, but if they don't let this win go to their head, I think they will be in really good shape because I know the Galaxy have potential. It's just all about putting together a full, complete game. Now, for the LAFC side of things, this is obviously their first loss. Obviously, you don't like losing, but if they're going to have to lose, it's early on in the season. They just can't let these losses pile up, kind of like what happened to the Galaxy last year, where they were in the top 7 the whole season, and then the final day of the season, they went down and dropped out of the top 7. So, either way, LAFC shouldn't fret about this loss too much. It's just that obviously, it's a stinging loss because they were down 2-0 most of the game. They cut the lead in half. They thought they had a goal in extra time, but unfortunately got waved off due to VAR. And all in all, it's just a rough loss, especially with who they have next week. They have Sporting KC at the Bank, aka Bank of California Stadium. So I think for LAFC, they have to have a quick little turnaround. They have to let go of the LA Galaxy loss. and then they basically just have to move forward. Now, the day after, they're facing Orange County, the Orange County Soccer Club. So Orange County is basically, the soccer club is not part of the MLS. It's basically, I want to say, it's like a league below that. It's kind of like their feeder league. If not, I'm not entirely sure about that. But this is basically the U.S. Open Cup third round. So I guess I'll have coverage on that once the Open Cup gets there. But that's a tough turnaround. You've got Sporting KC next Sunday, and then you have Orange County the following day. Like, big oof. But I guess that's basically like a little bit of a break for them. It's a little bit of a break for LAFC. And then once they get back to MLS play, they will play Cincinnati at Cincinnati. So I think it's going to be quite the matchup right there. Just because I want to say Cincinnati is having no, they're not having a solid season. They're 2-0-4, 2 wins, 0 draws, 4 losses. I'm not trying to bash Cincinnati. I'm just saying that if LFC, once they get past Sporting KC, wants to continue their winning ways, it's kind of going to have to be against teams like Cincinnati. So they have to beat up on the teams that they have to beat. If not, then those could be the games that come back to haunt them come probably October when it comes nearly playoff time. It was what happened with both the Galaxy and LAFC, and they have to, I repeat, have to come up big and win against these teams that they have to beat. I know it's a long season. I know injuries are a thing, but they need to come up big. Both teams need to come up big, and LAFC is no exception. But as of right now, the LAFC is still off to a solid start, and for the Galaxy to pull off that win, that crazy of a win, despite having 7 yellow cards, despite getting to the point where they had 0 substitutions left, it's quite astounding. And I actually want to read you this quote from the Daily News and from a reporter that got this quote. It was from Damian Calhoun, who is a writer for the Southern California News Group and for the Daily Breeze. This quote actually came from Raheem Edwards. He says, "Sometimes you have to have faith in it," referring to VAR. "Sometimes you have to have no faith in it. That's the game of football." So I really kind of agree with him, and you do have to have some faith in VAR. I want to say I'm not too big on the MLS, but I'm guessing VAR is basically like a challenge to like say if a goal is good or not, or if the other team was offsides, or if there was a foul, offensive foul, or anything of that sort. Regardless, I think the Galaxy kind of got away with that win. I'm not trying to say they didn't earn the win. I'm just saying that when you're up 2-0 or you're up throughout most of the match, you have to hold on to that lead. Your defense has to come up big because you never know when it comes to these rivalry games, because LAFC is always going to play your best, or they're always going to play their best, and they're always going to try to bring out the best in them. And El Trafico is no reason, or no exception. So it's a great win for the Galaxy. I'm not trying to take away the Galaxy's win. I'm just saying it should never ever get to that point where VAR has to bail them out. So, but overall, great game. I'm not going to say that was game of the year because there's probably going to be much dramatic games than that. But I think it could be a good little rivalry game of the year right there, nominee. So we'll see. All right, so that's going to do it for the MLS. Jumping on over into the NHL, the Kings and the Ducks are still kind of doing their thing. The Kings are inching closer and closer to that ever so delectable playoff spot. They are up 2-0 on the Minnesota Wild, which is really, really, really awesome. And the more they win, the closer they're going to get to getting that playoff spot. Unfortunately, I feel I said that they are in second place. That is actually not true. They are actually in third place behind Edmonton. So, looking at the Kings' most recent games, they did drop a big one to the Oilers last Thursday. They lost 3-2 in regulation. They didn't even salvage a point. And they also lost 3-2 to the Calgary Flames. Those are two big matchups that the Kings should have won. They have to win those games just because those are the two teams that are hovering over the Kings. And to lose in regulation and not having forced a shootout or overtime, it's not good. So those were some big losses that the Kings suffered. I'm not trying to say that that's going to hurt them in the long run, but if those kind of come back to haunt them in terms of seeding, then the Kings are kind of wish they had that back. They have, after today, they have 8 games remaining. They've got the Blackhawks Tuesday, the Avalanche Wednesday, at Avalanche and at Chicago. Then they're back home against Columbus. And then, not this Tuesday, but next Tuesday, they are at Anaheim for the, what is it called? The Freeway Face-Off? I'm pretty sure it's called the Freeway Face-Off. Regardless, they're playing the Anaheim Ducks. Now, the Ducks are an interesting team when it comes to this situation. I'm going to get into that a little bit later, but for the Kings, they have somewhat of a favorable schedule. They also have the Kraken, and then they also have the Ducks yet again. And then they have the Blackhawks. But just like I mentioned earlier, when it came to the Galaxy and LAFC, the Kings have to beat up on some of these not-so-favorable teams. They have to beat the Blackhawks just because the Blackhawks aren't going anywhere. The Avalanche might be a little bit of a steeper hill to climb. The Blue Jackets, they should have a good shot at beating, even though Columbus is nowhere near where they want to be when it comes to their division. As Columbus, when it comes to their division, they are nearing the road of elimination and trying to hang on by a little bit of a thread. And then the Ducks are just they've had themselves the worst second half of the season. And then they've got the Blackhawks again, and then they've got the Canucks, which I think are hovering, they too are also hovering over the path of nearly eliminated and trying to sneak their way into the playoffs. So, on paper, the Kings only have one true playoff contender that they're facing after today, and that is Colorado. If they can get some of these wins against Chicago, Columbus, Anaheim, Seattle, and Vancouver, that could catapult them to at least maybe the 2 spot. Now, do I think they can catch up to Calgary? I don't think so. I think Calgary's kind of got that Pacific Division title on lock. But at the very least, the Kings should guarantee themselves a spot in the big dance. They're 6 points ahead of Vancouver, which is my only concern. And if it gets to the point where Vancouver starts to catch up to the Kings and the Vegas Golden Knights, for that matter, because Vegas is only 2 games back of the Kings, then that game against Vancouver could prove to be crucial. And that's actually the last game of the season for the Kings. And it's at Vancouver. So for the Kings, once again, they got to beat up on these lower-ranked teams in the NHL. Jumping on over to Anaheim, which nearly had a disaster yesterday against Philadelphia. I was seeing the game, and I'm like, no. The Ducks cannot lose to the Philadelphia Flyers. No. We cannot have that. But fortunately for the Ducks, they woke up. After they were down 2-0 in the first quarter, they scored 3 goals, made it 3-2. Then Philadelphia tied it up at 3-3, and then eventually the Ducks scored the next goal, and then scored after that. So in order for the Ducks to make the playoffs, here's their gauntlet. They have the Carolina Hurricanes, the Florida Panthers, then the Tampa Bay Lightning, then the Columbus Blue Jackets, then the Kings, back-to-back. They have the Kings at Honda Center, then they have the Kings at Crypto. Then they have the St. Louis Blues, who I imagine are basically leaning toward playoff team. Then they have the San Jose Sharks, which is basically not leaning toward playoff team. And then they also have the Dallas Stars. So compare the Kings gauntlet to the Ducks gauntlet. The Ducks gauntlet is much more tougher, especially the next 3 games. Those are against brutal teams. Like the Hurricanes, the Panthers, and the Lightning. I know the Lightning haven't been as good as they were last year, but my good golly gracious, that's going to be tough. Tampa Bay, on the other hand, they have pretty much clinched. They pretty much can finish in the top 4 of the Atlantic Division. So I'm pretty sure it's top 4 teams in each division make the playoffs. I could be wrong about that. I think NHL rules kind of change every now and then. All I could tell you is that the Pacific Division has only one team officially eliminated, and that is Seattle. So back to the Ducks. The Ducks are basically walking on thin ice when it comes to making the playoffs. Like, it's just another one of those face-palming seasons where the Ducks had such a great start to the season. Everyone was thinking, oh my gosh, the Ducks are actually going to do good this year. And then the second half of the season happens, and then the Ducks start falling apart. They lose 10 in a row. They fall to the second worst league in the Pacific Division, and now they're just basically trying to find their footing. Yes, they have won. They were able to beat the Flyers, but it's just the Flyers. Like, you compare their previous 2 games against the Flames and the Oilers, they lost 4-2 to the Flames and then 6-1 to the Oilers. Absolutely disgusting. So for the Ducks, they have to get their you-know-what together. Otherwise, once again, the playoffs won't be featuring them. So that is that when it comes to the NHL. Before we get on into the Dum Dum of the Week award, we have to make word of our sponsors. So the first sponsor for iSports Radio, and iSports Radio is actually proud to call this the sponsor of iSports Radio, is the Southern California Warriors semi-pro football team. The world of semi-pro sports is unlike any other sports organization. Players pay to play in hopes of so many different outcomes, whether it's playing to get filmed to trap for professional teams, big-time colleges, or just playing to get in shape or stay in shape. No matter what, all semi-pro players have one thing in common, that it's playing for the love of the game. The SoCal Warriors have been on a quest to earn titles and give players second chances since 2017. Whether you're in Southern California or anywhere in the world, give semi-pro sports a chance if you love your sport. You may get that second chance you've been waiting for as an athlete. You can follow them on Twitter at SoCal Warriors, on Instagram at Southern California _Warriors, and on Facebook by typing in the word Southern California Warriors. Definitely do give iSports Radio a shout out. They're on Twitter and on Instagram at iSports Radio, and on Facebook by typing in the word IE, then sports, then radio. Also, iSports Radio has their website, www.isportsradio.com, and when you go there, you will see a Patreon link, which starts out for $5 a month. This donation gets you a shout out from all 30 of our shows, and higher tiers include iSports Radio merchandise, access to IESRU, the podcasting university of iSports Radio, and a chance to be featured on iSports Radio's flagship show, The Defining Moment, with the one, the only, Larry B. Because for the past 7.5 months, iSports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. All the while, iSports Radio has been continuing to be by the fans and for the fans, and with your help, we are ready to take the next biggest step. Thank you very much to everyone who continues to support iSports Radio and continues to make iSports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. And the 2022 NFL Draft is right around the corner, and iSports Radio is excited to announce its 3rd annual mock draft challenge. The rules are simple. Predict all 32 first-round picks. No trades, no modifications, no tricks, no swimming after you ate an hour ago, no passing goat, no collecting $200, none of that. The participant who has the best mock draft will receive a shout-out on all of our shows and their choice of an iSports Radio hat or shirt. For more information or to submit your mock draft, please reach out to Mike Pat at Let'sWine_IESR. That is on Twitter, by the way, as that Twitter account is also located in the link of this description of the show and of Set Point. Best of luck to anyone that participates. And then iSports Radio would like to congratulate, and I would like to congratulate, their fan of the month. She is known as Marcy Vargas, Marcy_Vargas88. She's a Packers fan hailing from Mexico. Like I said, iSports Radio is growing all over the world. We have fans in Mexico. We even have fans in England. You cannot deny this. Anyway, that is that for the sponsors. Now we gotta jump on into the Dum Dum of the Week award. So the Dum Dum of the Week award goes to someone that does something really dumb, that does something very head-scratching, that does something very face-palming, and that just does something that's really dumb that makes me want to drive myself up a wall. So, for this week's Dum Dum of the Week, oh boy, this one is a no-brainer, especially with what happened yesterday. So, this has nothing to do with Southern California, but I do have to inform you all of the sad news that happened. So, yesterday, former NFL, or current NFL quarterback Dwayne Haskins, who had played for the Washington Commanders, and who was one of the Pittsburgh Steelers' backup quarterbacks, unfortunately passed away yesterday. He passed away due to as he got hit in a car crash. It's very sad. He was way too young. He was even younger than me, and my thoughts and prayers go out to him and his family. I know he has a wife, and I know they just recently had a kid, so it really is saddening to hear that Dwayne Haskins passed away, and it really, really sucks. And I feel horrible for all. My heart goes out to all of the Ohio State and Pittsburgh Steelers and Washington Commanders. So it's really heartbreaking to hear about this news. So my condolences to all of those that have been affected by the passing of Dwayne Haskins. But that is not the reason why I have this as Dum Dum of the Week. So it's not the person that killed Dwayne Haskins as Dum Dum of the Week. Like I would like nothing more to have that person who killed Dwayne Haskins as Dum Dum of the Week. But it is not, that person that killed Dwayne Haskins is not Dum Dum of the Week. The person who is Dum Dum of the Week is the one who originally reported the news about Dwayne Haskins, and that was Adam Schefter. So this man thought he was super, super, super sneaky. So he tweeted out, Dwayne Haskins, a standout at Ohio State before struggling to catch on with Washington and Pittsburgh in the NFL, died this morning when he got hit by a car in South Florida, per his agent Cedric Saunders. Haskins would have been 25 years old on May 3rd. So let me read you all that again. Dwayne Haskins, a standout at Ohio State before struggling to catch on with Washington and Pittsburgh in the NFL, died this morning when he got hit by a car in South Florida, per his agent Cedric Saunders. Haskins would have been 25 years old on May 3rd. So you're probably wondering, well, Teran, why are you giving him Dum Dum of the Week when he's just reporting on the news? Here's why. In that first sentence that I just read, he said, Dwayne Haskins, a standout at Ohio State before struggling to catch on with Washington and Pittsburgh in the NFL. Why are you actually having to include that? I could not believe that. I almost didn't want to believe what I saw. It's like, why do you have to include that? Like, dude, that is absolutely atrocious. I'm sorry, but that you did not need to include that in your tweet. You could have just said, Dwayne Haskins, a standout at Ohio State and a quarterback who played for Washington and Pittsburgh, passed away this morning when he got hit by a car in South Florida, per his agent Cedric Saunders. You did not have to include the part of before struggling to catch on with Washington and Pittsburgh in the NFL. How dare you, Adam Schefter? How dare you? He eventually deleted the tweet, and then he actually reposted it. He says, Dwayne Haskins, a standout at Ohio State before becoming Washington's first-round pick and playing against Pittsburgh, died this morning when he got hit by a car in South Florida. Per his agent, Cedric Saunders, Haskins would have been 25 years old on May 3rd, or he would have turned 25 years old on May 3rd. But regardless, the internet does not forget, and you putting that he was struggling to catch on with Washington and Pittsburgh, everyone and their mothers was outraged at that. I cannot believe Schefter would put that. Now, obviously, it was the heat of the moment, but Schefter has done things like this in the past. He even did that with Marty Schottenheimer when he passed away. So, for Adam Schefter to do that with a 24-year-old NFL player, shame on you. Shame on you, Adam Schefter, for tweeting that out originally. And it was at that point he realized he made a mistake, and the internet had receipts. And I don't even think he didn't even make an apology saying, I know what I tweeted was wrong. I apologize for what I tweeted. I should have been more careful with my words. But he didn't even make note of that. He didn't even say, I'm sorry to all that got offended. I didn't mean to word it like that. But he said no apology. I understand he was just doing his job, but it could have been worded a whole lot better. So for Adam Schefter tweeting out the struggles of Dwayne Haskins when that did not need to be included, you are this week's Dumb Dumb of the Week award recipient.
So dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
Watch what you tweet, Mr. Schefter. The internet does not forget, and the internet has receipts. So, I also mentioned in the description that there was going to be 2 Dumb Dumbs of the Week. So, this one actually pertains to Gil Brandt, who actually went on air following, I want to say this was following the passing of Dwayne Haskins and how he dehumanized Dwayne Haskins, which was absolutely disgusting. So this was actually reported by USA Today, and I didn't even know this was a part of this. So Gil Brandt apparently went on air and talked about how Dwayne Haskins, he basically said something naughty, and he unlike Schefter, he made an apology. He says, "This morning, while learning of Dwayne Haskins' passing, I reacted carelessly and insensitively on a radio interview. I want to apologize to Mr. Haskins' family and anyone who heard my poor choice of words. I truly apologize. My heart goes out to his family at this difficult time." So I actually,
but also from a scouting.
I'm sorry. So I actually have not heard of this, but I actually do want to hear this right now in person when it comes to Gil Brandt's comments. So for those of you that have already heard, you could just skip over these 2 minutes. But for those of you that haven't heard, here's what Gil Brandt said.
Got to know the young man a little bit, but also from a scouting standpoint, you analyzed him over the years at Ohio State and coming into the league with the Washington Commanders and then going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, it's a terrible tragedy, and what wanted your thoughts on that, and also on the player, because you did chronicle his career very closely.
Well, Dan, I hate any time anybody is killed or anybody dies. But he was a guy that was living to be dead, so to speak. They told him, don't under any circumstances leave school early. You just don't have the work habits. You don't have this. You don't have that. What did he do? Left school early. I always can remember this. We invited players to the draft, and he was one of the players we invited to the draft. And we were told, no, we're going to have our own party. His own party was a party at the bowling alley, charged him $50 to get into the bowling alley for his party. It was always something, It's one of those things. I'm never offside, but they keep calling me for offside. Is what it is. So, it's a tragic thing. Anytime anybody dies, it's tragic. And especially when you're 24 years old and you got your whole life ahead of you. Maybe if he'd have stayed in school a year, he wouldn't do silly things. I mean, when you're jogging on a highway, on a road like that leaves it open, because I tell you, guy has 2 drinks and he's just a little bit to the right side of the road and gets hit and killed. It's easy to happen.
Yeah. I want to
Okay, so that was my first time hearing that, and I just gotta say, I am so disappointed in Gil Brandt's comments. Now, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. He apologized, but he said Dwayne Haskins was living to die. Are we kidding me right now? You cannot be saying these things over the internet. You cannot be saying these things in person when you're on the air. Oh my goodness. I was just so... after hearing that, I've lost all faith in some humanity. Like, first of all, why would you even say that? This is a person who just passed away. Have some respect. Have some morale. I couldn't believe what I just heard. Oh my God. I feel sick to my stomach just listening to that. I feel like just ending the show right now. Gil, that's unprofessional of you. That's unprofessional. I don't care. You are sickening to me. How dare you? How dare you say that about Dwayne Haskins? You mentioned it's at first when I almost wanted to stop that little clip right there just when he said Dwayne Haskins was living to die, and I almost feel sick listening to that. I now gotta cleanse my ears after what I just heard. How dare you, Gil Brandt? Matter of fact, I give him benefit of the doubt for apologizing, but after hearing that for the first time ever, I feel sick to my stomach. I really just gotta... Oh my God. I'm about to lose it. But just to simplify, it was unacceptable. Everyone reacted negatively toward it, and I don't blame him for reacting negatively toward it. Like, we all gotta learn to be respectful human beings. Like, be respectful to Haskins and his family. Like, this is a bad time to be mentioning that sort of thing. Like, it's just sick, my dude. So for Gil Brandt, the one who made those terrible comments over the air in an interview, you are this week's Dum Dum of the Week award as well. You can catch this Dum Dum.
So dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
And that, my friends, is all she wrote. What have we learned today, class? What we've learned is that the internet stays undefeated, they have their receipts, and more importantly, just watch what you say or post. But before I lose myself, that's going to do it for this week's episode of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. I actually will not be on this upcoming week for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show just because, once again, my life is a whirlwind and it's going to take me all over the place. But I'll be back the following week. So without any further delay, let's get on out of here because I am really hungry and I got to go back to watching some NBA. You dig? Thank you everyone for tuning in to the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. I really do appreciate you all. Sorry if the last bit was a little too over the top, but I had to make my point. If you say stupid things like that, you are going to be on Dum Dum of the Week. So I had to make my point right there. I really do appreciate everyone that tuned in. Big shout out to Andrew Hagenbaugh, Larry B, Marcus Lister, Adam Carnett, as well as Courtney Hardin, The Real Deal. I really do appreciate all of the support. I really do appreciate everyone tuning in. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen on the playback, I appreciate you. If you listen at work, I appreciate you. If you listen at any time, anywhere, any place, I appreciate you. For everyone here at IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. You all have yourself a great rest of the Sunday. Be kind to one another. Be mindful of what you say. Don't assume. Otherwise, you will get put on Dum Dum of the Week. I'll see you all tomorrow for Set Point. SoCal Supreme Sports Show, like I said, will be taking a week off, but we will be back stronger and better than ever. You'll have yourself a great Sunday. Peace and blessings to everybody. Enjoy this Sunday. And just remember one thing. SoCal is for SoCal. Peace!